Okay, so I'm going to show you now how to use a pivot table to summarize information from your data set. Now we have the data set here, and often when you have a lot of information like this, it can be difficult to really look at the trends of the information that you have. So let's say we have a particular query that we want to look at. For example, how many people were promoted per department per year from 2012 until now? Now that's a little bit difficult with the information that we have right in front of us. But the easiest way to look at that information is to use a pivot table. So the first step would be to highlight the entire table or the relevant information that you need. I'm just going to select the entire one for this exercise. You can do that with a shortcut of Control A, or you can simply drag from one corner of the table to another. And once you've selected the data that you want to use as your data source, you have the option of either using this shortcut here, which is your quick analysis, Control Q, or you can actually use the ribbon at the top. I'm going to click here. Now what I want to use is the pivot table. So if you go to tables, you have a range of options. They actually suggest to use some pivot tables using some of the data in your data set. However, I want a blank pivot table to start from scratch, so I'll click More. When you click More, again it's showing you the same information. You have the option of changing your data source if anything's changed. I'm fine with this, so we're going to go to Blank Pivot Table. Now what it does is actually creates a separate sheet. Now when you click on the pivot table, you can see on the right hand side here, Pivot Table Fields. Now that's all of the headings from your data set in the other sheet. Now, the original query was how many people were promoted per department per year from 2012. So if we want to start to explore this, first we have to look at the first criteria, how many people. Now to work out how many people, we're going to count the number of individuals. Now the way to discriminate between the number of individuals in a group is by using the individual unique ID that we've assigned to the candidates or the individuals of the organisation. Because we want to count that, that's actually a value. So I'm going to drag that to the values area below. Now first it says sum. Now sum's handy, but for this one we want to count how many people. So I'm going to click the arrow, go to value field settings, and where it says summarize value field by, rather than sum, we're going to click count and click OK. Now this looks kind of irrelevant at the moment, but from the other criteria we had, we wanted to know how many were promoted per department per year. If we want to look per department, we have business unit here. Now if you select that, it's actually going to fall into the rows, and that's where we want it. So we can see already that the pivot table is summarizing the number of individuals per department. So that's already checked off. Now we want to know how many were promoted each year. Now we know from our original data set that their last promotion was recorded by a date. All of those dates have their subsequent years. So we don't need to create any additional information. We already have that under the actual field heading of last promotion. So if you click that, it'll fall under the row. And you can see now that it's summarizing all of your information, the number of individuals per department, but rather than per year, it split it by each individual last promotion date. So if we want to now make this a broader group, we will right click the pivot table date, any one of them, it's not a problem, just make sure it's one of the dates of the last promotion, and you're going to go down to group. Now you have a couple of options here. I would actually uncheck both the starting at and ending at in case any of your data changes later. And you want to know the per year. So you're going to click year and make sure that you deselect month and click OK. Now you can see that it's grouped them by year, and you can see at the top of each one there's a less than a date or blank. Now if you remember from the actual data set here, there are a number of individuals who had not been promoted, and thus it was left blank. So if we go back to sheet 8, this value is actually showing you the number of people that were not promoted. So you can either leave it as this value, or to make it easier to understand when you manipulate it further, perhaps putting it into a chart like I'm going to show you in a minute, you can rename this to not promoted and click enter, or simply click off. And you can see that it's changed that all of the rest of those values as well. Now this is all of the information that you actually need for this particular question. However, if you want to display this in a format that is more visually attractive and you want to use maybe a graph, it's very easy to do so using this pivot table. So if you select all of that information, you can go to Insert, and you have a number of chart options here. Now the best one for this is actually probably going to be a stack bar chart. So if we go here, click the arrow, stack bar chart looks a lot like this. Just click that and it will automatically create that for you, and you can resize it so that it's easier to read. Now what you have here is just as your table represents. You have along the side here is grouped by business unit, following by the actual year, and the values of the bar are actually indicating the number of people. Now if you don't like the look of it this way and you want to show the entire number of people in one bar per department, but still separating the years, you can show this in a different way visually. If you look on the right hand side here, it's very much like our pivot table, because this is now a pivot chart, because it's based on our pivot table. If you want to make it join together, what you can do is move last promotions. Rather than being a row, you can change this to a column. The information is not going to change too dramatically, but what you'll see is that they're now a part of one bar, and each portion of that is going to be represented by a particular year. And there you have it. How many people were promoted per department per year from 2012 until now? You have both the answer in the form of a table and also by graph.